Jen and I are going to go unleash. This is going to be our second week where we just talk about everything, kind of like in office hours on Bodybuilding Institute. I mean, last week we went between, or no, this was Monday. We talked about the differences of different types of dreams, informative, interpretive, soul communication, defragmentation. We talked about TRT. We talked about Taylor Swift, mass movements, ADHD, autism, and labels, self-diagnosing, and the psychology of bodybuilding. We talked a little bit about that, what it means to define masculinity. And as always, we have a closing transmission for these amazing talks. And that's kind of what we're going to do on Unleashed, where we talk about the things that are a bit hot topic. They touch on many buttons, and we're just going to go with it. So today we're talking about human behavior, and how we can find out if we're being manipulated. So let me just play a video for you real quick, and then we're going to get into it. Is this it? Yep.
First, I want to get perception. So this is how does this person see the world? And if I can modify your perception.
How do you figure out how that person sees the world?
So beliefs first, okay. Values, identity, and tribalism.
You're trying to figure out somebody's perception of the world. When you are researching that, putting pen to paper, what does that look like?
There's 6 needs, and I want to look for individuals in society and where are most of them on this needs map. Those 6 needs are significance, acceptance, and approval, and the final 3 are intelligence, pity, and strength. So I know instantly, just by understanding you on this needs map, I know where your fears and your insecurities are. Better than probably your therapist that's been working with you for a year and it's been a minute and a half in a conversation. So a cult recruiter could use this as easily as a PSYOP doing it on an entire group of people. If the PSYOP isn't working, there's either A, double down, or B, stop.
So that was Chase Hughes. He was on the Sean Ryan show, which I don't watch that show very often, but I caught wind of it and I was very interested, as I usually am when it comes to human behavior. But as an intelligence agent for many years, I believe, he talked about how to predict and manipulate human behavior. And so some key words in there. Perception was a key word. I want you guys to remember this. But the way they know what your perception is to just by following your social media, just by having access to your searches and your Google Drives, your online shopping, all of that. They know what your needs are. They know what your values are, what you think your values are. And those needs are going to express things like fear and being accepted. What was the other one? Acceptance.
Social acceptance,
fear. There was another one that was like acceptance, but basically it was inclusion.
Yeah.
And so those are the top drivers. If you have those 4, and we can play it back if you need to, but you have these 4 needs are in your top, and 2 of them are fear and acceptance. They know that they can manipulate you. And so I found it really interesting, and you have to watch the full show on Sean Ryan. It's a long show, but it's very interesting. So I want to go back to that word perception, because there is a difference between perspective and perception. Perspective holds all of the advantages. So if you're able to have perspective, you're already in the advantage. Mm-hmm. That means that you can look beyond perception to perceive another person's perception.
Right.
So we talked about this a little bit in office hours too. We're like, if you're working at a company You hold the advantage by having perspective of what your boss may want, what your boss needs, what your boss would do. If you're able to predict and tap in through your perspective of your boss, you'll get the job, you'll get the promotion, you'll get the bonus, you'll get all of the awards and the accolades because you're looking beyond your own perception. So if you imagine, that's what perspective is. It's using your imagination to go beyond your own perception. Whereas if you're just in perception, which is the majority of people in the entire world, then you are at no advantage and you are very limited. So when we talk about Chase Hughes on the Sean Ryan show and how he's able to manipulate mass groups of people, it's because most people are limited simply by perception, and perception is like a thumbprint. Everyone's perception is unique. Your perception may share threads of values or thoughts and beliefs with other people, but yours is still very unique. And so unless someone else can have perspective, they don't truly know what your perception is. So therefore, they dig in based on what you search, what you like, what you share, what you talk about, what you buy, all of those things. But it has no advantage. So your perspective is the imagining of another person's perception. That gives you the advantage. And that's why, after years now since the pandemic, we've seen in real time this timeline where it peaked of people moving into acceptance, inclusion, and fear. That was in the pandemic, where perspective just went completely out the window. It was their perception. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to kill my grandma. I'm not going to have any friends. I'm not going to have any connection. All of those things. I'm going to get sick. I could die. We saw in the news, anytime you turn on the news, the little ticker telling you how many people died that day. It was just constantly in your face. And so we saw that in real time sort of peak during the pandemic, and a lot of people haven't recovered from that. And so I'll play this other video. And
I just remembered the other part though, Sarah, too, is the empathy. Because I know for me, like, that is what gets me a lot of times, is having empathy for someone else. And that can be, that could be so easily manipulated. And luckily I figured that out about myself. But, I think that they really play on that.
Yes. So that, again, so you have your own individual perception. And moving beyond is imagining another person's perception. That's perspective. And then you've got empathy that is formulated by your perspective. They call that suicidal empathy, is when you care more about the other person's perception than your own. Mm-hmm. And that's when you start to lose grip of your values. You lose grip of what you truly believe, what is sincere truth within yourself. How you identify, what is your mission, what is your purpose in life, and use grip of that. That's why they call it suicidal empathy, because you give yourself up.
Yeah, when you abandon yourself like that, then that makes you very vulnerable. Like you're
truly the death of who you are, because you are then becoming what someone else wants you to be. And that's important. That is important. So when you have empathy or blind compassion towards people, groups of people, or certain social issues, you can very well be easily manipulated. Empathy and compassion are one of those very heart-centered emotions that can be used as leverage against you. See, that's where we can't just have blind compassion, because it will be used against you. You bleed your heart out for certain things that are atrocious. I have lots of issues that I am extremely compassionate about that sometimes can move me to tears, but I also have to understand that can be used against me. I mean, that's marketing and advertising. They've been doing that since the 1930s. They knew this. Yeah. So here's one. I showed you this, Jen. This is a video that was generated, I think this was like 6 months ago, maybe less, where all of the people in Congress were posting on X and Instagram and Facebook, I think Blue Sky and some other social media, but people started noticing all of these people in Congress were posting the exact same video with the same graphics, the same editing, and the same script. So they downloaded all of them and put them up, and this is wild. You guys watch this and keep in mind, these are members of Congress. These are our elected leaders.
When I win, I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
Whoa, that's intense.
That's scary. All right. And if you don't see how scary that is, you're doing it wrong. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. All I'm saying is that is, like you said, Jen, absolutely. It's intense. I understand that the media and certain politicians and community leaders and even the school board are all given talking points all the time. We're always given talking points. Sometimes when we do these shows, we write down our own talking points. But this is a huge machine that is sitting behind your elected leaders, telling them what to say. Is that why we elected these people? Because they don't even know what to say. They don't know how to talk. They don't have their own words. They don't have their own thoughts, their beliefs, their values. No, they're just reading scripts and just regurgitating them over and over and over again, and didn't think that we would notice that, because each of these leaders come from different districts in different states. So if you live in this district in this state, you're following this person, you may not catch that 50 other people in different states and districts said the exact same thing. So for the most part, it flies underneath the radar. But when you're someone like me, I watch everybody. So my X account is generally just to follow political news, political leaders, and I follow everybody on all sides, independents, the Republicans or the right, and Democrats. And I follow them all because I want to see everything. Right? I don't want to, someone on the right says this and then I just take them for their word. I want to hear it from the other side. Mm-hmm. And so that's pretty much what X is. And I think a lot of people,
a lot of times too, both sides are saying the same thing. Like how many times
they are, and it's like,
times have you pointed that out, that they're saying the exact same thing? When Sarah pointed that out to me, that pattern of the left and the right saying the exact same thing, I was like, oh, and now I can't unsee it. It's everywhere. It's really challenging not to see it.
Yeah. Again, go beyond your perception. You gotta look at the perspective. Why would they say that? Why would they both be saying the same thing? This isn't a bipartisan or two-party country. No. And again, there goes my tinfoil hat, but I just don't think it is. I think we're a uniparty that likes to divide and point fingers and blame to keep all of us distracted on stupid things, but that's the way it is. So, sorry, my daughter's here today. She wants to go on a scooter ride. So that's important. So the reason I showed you that video with the Sean Ryan thing, and then this video of all the members of Congress reading a script, holding the same, DCI or DCJ or what's it called, microphone?
Yeah, the DJI.
They all had the same DJI microphone, reading a script with all of the same graphics and editing.
That does feel like a psyops, for sure.
Yeah. So if you're not a conspiracy theorist, I don't know how to explain, to make it more clear. Like, that's what's going on. These are elected leaders that are supposed to be representing people in their state and the constituents that live there and their needs. But instead, they're just reading scripts to the masses, to the public. For what? It has nothing to do with their state. It's just to bash Trump or bash the head of DHS or to whatever it is. They're
And
trying to get you to believe because they've tapped into your perception and they know exactly through their perspective what you need to hear to get you to do what they want you to do. And that is scary.
yeah, well, I mean, any cult leader is going to tell you that the messaging needs to be succinct. Like it needs to be aligned. It needs to be repeated many, many, many times to get in. Because you know, the human psyche, it's not just this linear thing. We are always perceiving millions of things that are going on in our environment at every second of our lives. So when you have very clear messaging like that, and it's a visual message, because you know humans are so visual. It's even like you said, that's brilliant that you saw that they were all had the same microphone,
The same, holding it in the same spot.
So you know, I would guess the funding from that probably came from DJI as well. Like, you know,
Well, it was definitely a good commercial. Whether they funded it or not, I'm sure they benefited.
well, I mean,
Shout out to DJI. They do have good mics.
they do have very good mics. I'm sorry, DJI, but you know, I'm not saying they're in nefarious affairs with politicians, but maybe they are. Like, who knows? But I would say that they are probably all carrying that as for the younger people, like the younger generations, because you know everybody loves to look at those.
Yeah. Well, all that to say is, again, perception is a lot different than perspective. If you don't have perspective, you don't have the advantage in anything in your life. In relationships, you don't have perspective of your partner. In your job, perspective of your team, your superior, your boss. Even the founder, CEO of the company, you know, always have perspective of where they come from. And if you don't have perspective of the community you live in, your neighbors, the educators that teach your children, then you have no advantage and you are being manipulated. And so again, I say all that to say this is why I created these courses. Because these are all entry courses. Creating change is pretty intense. So just look at the two left ones. Anyone who comes on as a client for me, I give them these two courses: your core values and decision-making system, because these build upon your perception to help you create perspective, not only perspective to the outside world, but introspection as well, which is perspective looking inward. So you have to be able to know who you are, and in order to know who you are, you have to understand what your values are. And in order to know what your values are, you need to understand what your beliefs are about those values. And in order to uphold those values, you need to have your own rules around those values. And you're not going to uphold your values and live in any sense of integrity or honesty or sincerity if you're not upholding your values based upon your own rules, your own beliefs, which you have already sanitized, I will say, of what you've been taught or made to believe, things that are not yours. So that's what the values course is about. It's about sanitizing everything that you've been taught and holding on to the things that are true and sincere for you and carry meaning for you, and that support your purpose in life. They support your dream that you have, the dream you wish to fulfill, and the legacy you wish to leave behind. If you don't understand that and you don't have your own laws, then you're not going to uphold those values. So what I talk about often is everybody values their health, but the meaning of that is different person to person. Again, perception is very unique. It's based upon all of your lived experiences, all of your traumas, all of your belief systems, and that's how you identify. What is health? Health is very different from one person to the next.
Mm-hmm.
For someone like me, health means that I'm living pain-free, I'm getting good sleep, I'm breathing well, I am not always getting sick, I have a robust immune system, I'm strong, I can, all
Healthy relationships.
yeah, all facets of my fitness are balanced, which they never are completely, because I am sitting in this chair, but I'm aware of it because I have defined meaning of my own self, what health means. And health also, yes, means very balanced, healthy interpersonal relationships. For someone else, health might mean I'm not taking any medications. I don't have to go to the pharmacy all the time. And that might just be it. Or, I have energy and I'm not taking drugs. And so that's what the values course teaches you, is like, define it for yourself. You apply the meaning, and then based upon your meaning of your values, your core values, you are to create the rules. So in order to uphold this value of health, these are the things I have to do. So for me, for health, it's get good sleep, which means prioritize my health throughout the day, what I eat, how much I drink, how much I move my body, how many breaks I take, how much I'm stretching. Am I breathing correctly? Am I getting enough full breaths? Am I doing things that are happy making? All of that affects me sleeping good at night. And that is my rule, to get enough good sleep. I'm 45 years old. I don't have cells to waste. And I don't want to waste any cells like I did in my 20s. So sleeping is number one. But in order to sleep, I have a list of rules that I have to keep after. And so that's for me. And I will know when I'm not upholding that value, when things start to hurt, or I'm having stupid accidents, or I'm not sleeping very well, or I'm having digestive issues, or my menstruation cycle is off and I'm feeling different symptoms, then I know. Then I know I'm not following my own rules, but they're my rules.
But what I love so much about your courses, Sarah, is it gives you a framework. Because when you say values and stuff, like, that's really hard for a lot of people to understand how that fits into their life, and how those are actually actors in your life driving what you do in your life.
Yeah.
And we've all felt the very painful experience of not having a great job that hasn't aligned for us, and working in it too long, or working too many hours, and then your relationships and your family life falls apart, and not understanding how to balance that. So it gives you the framework to understand yourself, and then it also gives you actionable items on how to make those play out in your life.
That's
so
true.
You will see that you and I have the value of life, or of health. That's our number one, right? Mm-hmm. And not everybody has that. We know that, but you and I have that. And for some people, they have no idea that if their health is not what they're taking care of, number one in their life, everything else, it will just start to kind of trickle down, and you'll have major issues and everywhere else. So I just wanted to point that out, that I think your framework in your courses is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, so I take a lot of complex psychological concepts and interpret them for you, so that you do have a laid out framework where it's all I do is I prompt you to think about this, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you that, because again, purpose is so important. If we don't have a purpose, then we don't want to do it. We're not motivated. So I will give you why this is important to do these steps, because it gives you a purpose to doing it. And so the framework is very intentional with those courses. DMS is the decision-making system. This is where we get into dreams. What is your dream? Not goals, your dream. And it helps you take what you learned in the values course and apply it into how to make a decision. And once you figure out, it's a formula, and it's a very easy 3-step formula, that once you understand your values, once you understand what you need, and once you know what your dream is, then every decision, from what should I eat for breakfast to what should I wear and what should I do after work, is so easy. Whether you should move, whether you should paint the deck or spend your money on something else, everything is very simplified into this formula. But you're always going to have paralysis around decisions, or be impulsive around decisions and make bad decisions if you don't understand what your values are, and you don't know what you need, and you don't know what your dream is. You need meaning and purpose. That's why we're here in this world.
And you could even take that back to what you were saying earlier, is that if you don't have these foundations of understanding your values, you're going to be very easily manipulated, because you're just very uneven ground, right? Because you don't know, where should I go? Where should I go? It's like, no, that's, and I see that on social media all the time, where it creates this instability, all these trends and stuff like that, like the 6-7 thing that's going on right now. You see like, oh, those are, Satan numbers and stuff like that. It's, anyways, we could go on and on about social media and trends, but it's very, you can see how people get addicted to that unstable environment of where they just don't know who they are really at the bottom line.
Yep. Yeah. So again, if you're being
manipulated, let's go into what we really want to talk about.
Oh, here's the hot topics. We are transitioning now into the hot topic of the day. Let me start
a big button to push.
Yeah,
a big button.
The hot topic of the day, which isn't actually of the day because I am known to talk about this, but now that I am you have taken me off my leash and you're letting me go, and I'm telling you, it is so liberating. Let's talk about Elizabeth Eddy. She is a women's FC soccer player, I think from Angel City FC. She wrote an op-ed in the New York Post, which was it was a great op-ed. But her teammates responded by calling her transphobic and racist. Let's hear what Elizabeth Eddy had to say.
At the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is protect women's category in all levels. So there is misogyny happening, but it almost happens in and of itself through this trans situation and intersex. But at the end of the day, like Pierce was saying, the trans and intersex people are valuable. They need to be protected. They also are vulnerable, but they're differently vulnerable than women. And women do need their own category, which is why we fought for women's rights, why we have women's sports, why Title IX happened. And so moving forward, the same way women fought for rights to be protected and have spaces is the same way we can move to protect trans people and intersex people and give them opportunities in sport. This is newer and it's earlier on, and we're going to be in this together. And so we can keep having this conversation, but the women's category must be protected. And the NWSL needs to establish gender eligibility on biological sex to ensure fairness and continue the momentum we have going forward. At the end of the day.
Brilliant. Yeah.
What a racist transphobe. This woman, she's done so much to uplift the success and notoriety of the Women's Soccer League and the FC. And she has fought so hard for women's rights. Just basically, if you're a female athlete, you're a pro athlete in the female space, in the female category, you already don't get paid as much as men. You don't get the attention or the fame or the accolades as men. And so what she started seeing is like, now they're bringing in transgender players and putting them on the women's teams. And these transgender players are becoming the highest paid and the most famous and the most talked about and the most plugged in social media. And it's insane. It's insane. Meanwhile, women are still trying to get the same amount of sponsorships, the same amount of pay, the same amount of people filling the seats in the arenas. And it's just bananas. And there's one that you might like because you're a hockey player, Jen. There's now a hockey player in Minnesota that has 7 transgender women on the team.
Yeah, wow.
Guess who's number 1?
Yeah, I played many games against Minnesota.
It's, of course, like, and so the thing that they say is never happening or hardly ever happens is always happening. So I encourage people who think that when us talking about this makes us transphobic, I encourage you to look at the website hecheated.org. Try not to be triggered by the title of the website, but it has an ongoing live tally of transgender women that have taken places, trophies, championship titles, records, and medals. I don't know if I said that already. As an ongoing, all the way from high school to collegiate to Olympic to community-based sports like marathons, cycling competitions, things like that. And you'll see that this hardly ever happens is happening every single day. Every single day, women are losing their scholarships, they're losing their records, their titles, their medals, their ability to advance, their place on teams. And that's a problem. That's a problem, period. End of.
And I think a part of the problem with that, and I can speak from, the high level of sport that I did actually play in for years, is that because we're women and we want to have that collective kind of group people, like I would have spoke up about someone coming onto my team about that, but other members on my team probably wouldn't have spoken up about it because they just don't understand the complexity behind it, or maybe they just felt too uncomfortable to talk about it, right? And it was always really tough growing up playing sports because a lot of my coaches were men, right? So that actually worked for us. If there was a trans person coming into the dressing room, I feel that a lot of my male coaches probably would have stuck up for us and been like, wait a second here, like, is this really what the team wants? But that's tough, because if you're talking about younger people, like really young teams, like who's actually protecting these children?
Right. And again, if you want to watch Piers Morgan Uncensored on YouTube, you can watch that full panel. It was like over an hour long, where they really talked about this. The panelists on the far right were advocating for transgender women in sports on women's teams, and the two on the left were we're advocating for more women's spaces, open categories. Let's have a discussion about this. Let's keep talking about it, but we need to protect women's space. And the one in the middle is a transgender woman who was advocating for single sex spaces and women's sports and keeping, the biological sex categories in sports and fairness, safety, privacy, integrity, all of those things. And she made a very good point. I wish I had her name. I apologize for not quoting her by name, but what she said was really important, is that there's a very small minority of sincere transgender individuals in the transgender community that want nothing to do with this, that they respect boundaries. They just want to live their life. They want to express themselves the way they express themselves. But there are a majority of bad actors that are hijacking the transgender community and using it for their narcissistic, fetishistic gains to take over and dominate a certain space. And there is psychology behind that. We were talking about before we went live, we talked about the three faces or the three masks of a narcissist. Is the two that they're going to show the world, is the charmer and the victim. And what they don't show you is the manipulator. So what they're doing is they're gaslighting you. They're making you think that you're the bigot because you don't want to share a locker room with them, that you're the transphobe. And they're playing again on your perception as a woman. I am compassionate. I am community minded. I am a kind person. I am inclusive. I am a social justice warrior, and my heart bleeds for marginalized people. That is women. That is the feminine nature in itself, historically, and they are preying on that by gaslighting you into saying, oh, you have boundaries, then you're a bigot, you're a transphobe.
Yeah.
I was interrupted again. Can I watch Netflix?
Okay, there's a feminine energy right for you right there.
Yes.
She's exuding.
She's trying to be so polite and not interrupt.
Also a mom. We love you, Ari.
I do. She's so cute. I love that kid. But
we love that kid so much.
When you have a group, as this transgender woman said on Piers Morgan, that is hijacked an honest and sincere community within the LGBT community with their ideology to policy pipeline that says me, 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 and we don't take any compromises. It's when they say they want trans people to not exist. They're trying to extinguish trans people's existence. They want to take away our rights. And that is the most highest form of gaslighting, because there are no transgender rights that have been taken away or eliminated. No one wants trans people to die. I haven't heard one person say that. And so it's such a gaslighting manipulation tactic, which I believe comes from many layers up at the top that trickles down and actually convinces people that this is true. Yeah. And again, they're preying on your perception.
Yeah, and I really feel like in the, we're talking more about the US, is that they really do try and target trans, you know, that part of their community is like they try and treat them like they're the, you know, the outsiders, the outcasts. And I've always felt like that was, you know, that's a very manipulative tactic right there. But I wanted to go back quickly to the topics of the categories of women, trans. So I like how she spoke about the category of women's sports, because I think that's really important to keep and really fight for. But I don't see that there's any problem at all for trans people to have their own category in sports. I see nothing wrong with that. I think that's I really truly believe that's the way that we should go. And it would be, and you could also have a subcategory of trans with women, like the female, biological female. So you could actually have two categories. You would have the women's sports, you would have trans and women, or you would have the trans category for themselves.
Mhm.
And but I totally 100% agree with you, Sarah, that we need to protect the women's category, and especially when it comes to sport.
Yeah,
I-
we don't have to spend too much time talking about why sport
No.
is so important to young women and adult women. Again, when you go back to talking about meaning and purpose, for so many young women and women around the world, like their sport gives them meaning, it gives them purpose. And all we have to do is look at how many trans men are infiltrating and dominating in the male category of any sport. You're not going to find any. There's one, a wrestler from high school, a female to male transgender athlete who was just badass. And even after she transitioned to male to a he, still dominated the boys in wrestling, but then went on to college and ended up
Yeah.
back in the female category because, yeah, when you're at a D1 level wrestling,
Yeah.
it's a very
And
good match.
You talked about that in our last one, did you not? About the physiological effects or the differences. We're not going to go into that again.
Yeah.
But it's just the
Oh,
sheer
yeah.
structural differences between a male and a female, even if you have gone through the transfer of becoming a male or a female, like there's just so much differences.
So many differences. I mean,
Yeah.
we can look at them. You can look at them. You look at the size of the torso. The male torso is a lot shorter. The women's is a lot longer. The shoulder width is much more narrow in the female. You've got the pelvis, the hips, and all of that is very, very different. So even if you're a male who has gone halfway through male puberty, let's say you started transitioning at 16, 17, 18, you still have the biological bone structure, muscle mass, the size of your heart, the size of your lungs. Your joint surfaces are larger than a female's joint surfaces. Look at the kneecaps.
Yeah,
Look
the
at the
joints.
differences.
Yeah, that's intense. The joints.
And this is why women, especially as the growth plates are going through development, experience far more knee injuries in sports, mostly in soccer and basketball. And then in menopause, why women have more problems with their hips and their knees.
Or pregnancy.
Yep, their joint surfaces are a lot smaller. They have a lot more laxative, prolactin is a hormone that we produce that makes us more flexible, allows our ligaments and our muscle tissues and all the tissues around the joints to stretch more, which leads us to more prone to injury.
Well,
and then on top of that, we can't dismiss the fact that if you're born a man, even if you take testosterone suppressors and then you're taking estrogen, it doesn't matter. You still have the bone structure. You still have 30 to 60% more muscle fiber mass, depending on the muscle type 1, type 2 muscle. So I believe it's type 1 muscle tissue. Men have about 30% more mass than women, and type 2 muscle tissue, men have about roughly 60% more mass. And so if you take testosterone suppressor, you may lose 5% of that. That doesn't mean shit in the long run. It also doesn't make your shoulders more narrow. It doesn't make your joint surfaces smaller. You have that much advantage. And then CO2 max, your lungs, your heart, everything is bigger, which makes you more, you have higher endurance, you have higher power, force, speed, strength, all of that. You're far more advantaged, even if you're taking testosterone suppressing medication, even if you are qualifying for the women's category by having the max amount of testosterone that women are allowed to have in the women's category. That doesn't take away muscle mass, bone density, size, heart capacity, lung capacity, all of that. It doesn't take that away at all.
Well, and I mean, the fact that we have periods as well. Women are way more susceptible to injury playing sports when they're on their period because of what happens to our hormones. And
Yeah.
we're actually shedding part of our organ.
Right. Yeah. And so also our cortisol too. The amount of recovery required for women when exposed to stressful stimuli or, any sort of higher rate of pulse being exposed to stress stimulus. The one on the left is a female. That's the cortisol levels measured every 10 minutes over 24 hours. The one on the right is male. So if you understand anything about cortisol and what that does to your inflammatory response system, your immune system, all of your hormones, all of your soft tissues, your organs, your nervous system, everything, the amount of time you need to recover from any training, any stressful stimulus, whether it is a illness or even your cortisol changes during your menstruation cycle, throughout your cycle. If it's sports, working out, training, psychological stress, a fight with a loved one, whatever it is, women require much more recovery time. Taking hormones is not going to change this at all. And this is a woman's cycle. Your cortisol is going to peak right around days, if you have an average of 29-day, 28-day cycle. Right here, when the red and the blue and the yellow go up, you have higher levels of cortisol. And if you look at between day 7 to 13, estrogen is going to mimic cortisol. So estrogen is higher levels of estrogen is associated to higher levals of cortisol. That's why during that time of menstruating woman, that's why she is really good at multitasking, focusing, training. She's got speed, she's got endurance, she's recovering quicker because her testosterone's up a little bit higher, all of that. She's a beast during that week. So that's what women have. And if you're a transgender woman taking certain hormones, you could try to mimic this cycle to mimic being a woman, but biologically, across all systems of your body, including your muscles and your lungs and your bones, don't react to that. They don't react to those synthetic hormones. They're going to give you symptoms and may change your physicality or your physique, or they might feminize some features, but overall, it doesn't really make enough change to put you at an equal playing field with women in the women's category. And that's just sports. So
right.
We want to talk about women's spaces. This is where I'm going to go unleash. Let's talk about Tish Hyman. Tish Hyman is a Black lesbian from California. And if you go to any of her social medias, Instagram, Facebook, X, pretty much since she opened her accounts, it's all been about her music. She's an amazing singer, by the way. I got to give a shout out to Tish. But she peaked in the public view at a Gold's Gym or Gold's owned gym with a transgender individual staring her down in the locker room. Here she is.
In that gyms across America, we're like, trans women are going into the women's locker room and not really caring about how women feel about it. And it's really hurtful, yo. Like, how you gonna say you want to be a woman or that you are a woman, but you don't give a fuck how women feel? Today I was naked in the locker room. I turned around and there's a man there in boy clothes, lip gloss, standing there looking at me. I'm butt naked. So the first thing I think is maybe there's a worker in here. Maybe I missed the sign. I say the word sir to say, sir, what are you doing in here? He goes, don't fucking talk to me. I'm a woman. I have a right to be in here. Immediately, I'm fucking pissed because I'm butt naked. I feel violated. I feel like weird. Like, I don't want to deal with this, right? In that gym.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. I would lose my shit.
And she did. The second time she went, because she reported it, went back to the gym, nothing would happen. I guess he spotted her as she's going into the dressing room, and he followed her. He followed her in there, and she lost her shit. She said, I've already talked to you about this. They had a confrontation in the hallway there. People came up, they started videotaping it. There was a huge altercation verbally, and she got kicked out of the gym for this. And she posted about it on her social media. She's like, you guys, this has nothing to do with my music, but what is going on? And next thing you know, she gets kicked out. And Joey Swole, he's a big fitness influencer who talks about his whole social media presence is about gym etiquette. He calls people out who have poor gym etiquette. He hopped on and wanted to support her. He said, Tish, reach out. I will pay for a year of gym membership anywhere close to you. Let's get you back into the gym. Because Tish's story, she lost like 150 pounds or something. So fitness was really important to her. And he's like, no way. No, I want to support you. Let's get you a gym membership. I'll pay for it for a year. And then she just started going viral. And next thing you know, so this has been about the past month, and she went up to in Northern California to talk to Anthony Weiner, who's running to take Nancy Pelosi's seat. She asked him point blank, what are you going to do about this? He dodged it. He gaslit her. She got booed by the other people in the room. And she, again, that ended up on social media. And it's like what she said is, don't use my blackness, the civil rights that my people fought for in order to legitimize your crazy ideas and your delusion. And maybe it wasn't the nicest thing to say, but you could tell she's so angry. She is so angry. And on top of that, she's a lesbian. So she's supposed to be an ally, and she is getting crapped on left and right. And people are really going after her. And anybody who supports her or wants to align with her or saying, like, I've been feeling the same thing, these people are getting trashed, doxxed, called all kinds of names. Joey Swole, that influencer, he owns a company called Taste, I think. And it's like healthy, holistic, no seed oils, organic sauces. And after he posted the video saying, let's get you back in the gym, I'll pay for it for a year, he had a lot of trans rights activists go onto his page and write Yelp reviews and Google reviews, trashing his product and his company, simply for saying, I care about this woman, let's get her back in the gym.
Yeah, that's awful. I feel so bad for her. And you can tell by her emotion in that clip that you showed that she's been traumatized by that. Like, or it's triggered something that has happened to her in the past, or, generational trauma that she's actually carrying as a lesbian Black woman. And
you can hear her nervous system.
Yeah, you can, exactly. Like, as women, I can totally relate to that. I would lose my mind if I was standing in a dressing room naked and I turned around and I thought what was, looked like a male to me. I totally commiserate with her 100%.
I would probably freak out too.
Yeah, I would. Or, a lot of people freeze, but I think for me, I personally would have lost my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then as it turns out, then TMZ got that guy to go, who goes by the name Alexis. Remember this for later. TMZ got Alexis on and did an interview and, basically gave her the floor and interviewed her and she, by that time, she was all dressed up, had, some lipstick on, and was dismissing Tish and calling this an attack on transgender rights, an attack on transgender women, and really did a good job at playing the victim. We were talking about this before we went live. I call them cry bullies.
Yeah.
And here's how we know, because after TMZ put out the interview with this person we call Alexis, guess what they found out? Alexis came from Ohio, where he has a restraining order, a permanent restraining order. And anybody who understands the legal system, you understand how difficult it is to get a permanent restraining order. You have to really meet some sincerely dangerous criteria by his ex-wife, because he broke her jaw. He brutalized her physically, and so badly she had to have reconstructive jaw surgery. And then he left. He moved to California, and he changed his name to Alexis. His ex-wife's name is Alexis. So he took on her identity and said, I'm a woman, and goes into locker rooms and verbally assaults women. So before we knew this about him, we didn't have to know this about him to go, that's just not right. But we already knew that people like him are having the red carpet rolled out for them to just go into women's spaces when they are the most vulnerable. Women's shelters, women's prisons, women's locker rooms, women's bathrooms. Sports thing is a whole different ball game. But when we're talking about private spaces that protect the safety and integrity and dignity of women, we are rolling out the red carpet for men like this. And we didn't have to know this about this individual to justify it. But then just like a unicorn just shows up in the middle of this story while he's trying to get his 10 minutes of fame on TMZ, thinking no one's going to find out that you brutally assaulted your wife and broke her jaw and landed her in the hospital for who knows how long. She had to have reconstructive facial surgery. And you took her name and moved to California, and now you're verbally assaulting women in locker rooms. We don't have to define this. It's obviously a problem.
Well, and I mean, just by what she said with their interaction, that when she turned around and noticed that there was a man behind her, that she said, what are you doing here? And he just went on total defense mode, swore at her, and said, you don't have the right to talk to me. Like, for me, alarm bells would be going off. Be like,
that's instincts. So we're trying to tell women not to listen to their instincts because they're supposed to have blind compassion. We're telling women we're not allowed to have boundaries because we're supposed to have empathy for this marginalized group of people, which is becoming more and more not so marginalized, and that should be a red flag. It's like this ideology to policy pipeline that contradicts observable, factual reality, and it dismantles duality on every single level, which basically it neuters our own ability to trust our instincts. Because if we don't, then we're nice and we're inclusive and we're the good guys and we're good people and we're kind. We're good, obedient women. But if we trust our instincts, suddenly we're bigots, we're misogynistic, whatever, transphobic, racist, you just every single name in the book. And that's pretty wild.
Yeah, well, go ahead and call us that, because we've been called way worse. We've been through way worse. But I will still stand on my soapbox and be like, this is a woman rights issue. And especially in like places, like you said, places of vulnerability, like washrooms and dressing rooms where there's going to be other young women in there. No, sir. No,
and
sir.
one out of 4 reported worldwide women have been sexually assaulted. So you've got women who are already, their nervous systems are constantly looking for a threat. That's survival. And you have men like that coming in there. Tish probably was very traumatized by that because her instincts told her that the observable, factual reality standing in front of you is a potential threat, but other people are trying to say, don't listen to that, ignore that. And what happened several weeks later? We find out, yeah, he brutally assaulted a woman who happened to be his wife and then took her name. There are names for that in the DSM. That's a sexual fetish. That is a psychological disorder. And if anything, it is narcissism at its highest level of entitlement and manipulation and domination. I call them cry bullies because narcissism is too nice of a word. And here's why. This is, I get asked this on social media all the time. Like, why do you care about this so much? Like, it's such a minor issue. It's such like these things, it's like less than 1% of the population. Because you're not seeing what I'm seeing. Someone who has spent 15 years researching, analyzing studies and data of female specific, sex specific science and medicine and everything on every level to understand women down to a cellular level. You're telling me like that I don't see this? You may not see it because I'm not studying this. I'm not opening, you're not opening up the Lancet to look up all the recent studies and articles that have been written on sex-specific cogitations in whatever category, and you're finding that they have replaced the word female or woman in the title with bodies with vagina. You're not seeing that. You're not seeing this on social media of people who get so angry at you if you are not an obedient little woman who goes along with a dysfunctional ideology. And look at this, if you're a TERF, you can go fuck the business end of a barbed wire bat. I'd stab a TERF in the crotch and give them a reason to need a tampon. Kill all TERFs. Your pain when my fist meets your face. TERFs should die. Trans women aren't real women. Yeah, you'll know what'll be when real. Your pain when my fist meets your face. Don't you mean should the basic rights of human rights be affordable to everyone or just people like us? Because either I get to self-ID as a woman or I'll start IDing as a fucking pissed off bale of rage and come at transphobes with a nail-encrusted baseball bat. It goes on and on. Feel free to screenshot and just read some of the nice, lovely little comments that I've had to endure over the past 5 years, simply for talking about female-specific, sex-specific health issues, fitness science, kinesiology, menstrual cycles, menopause, all of that. That's what I hear. That is what I get. You don't see it. I do. So that's why this is a big fucking deal. Look at this cute little person who followed one of my colleagues around on the West Coast during a conference they were holding on Title IX. Isn't she cute? What a sweetie. How about these people who want to come into the locker rooms and the bathrooms? Skin your local TERF. For those of you who don't know, a TERF is what they would call me, a trans exclusionary radical feminist. In the suite, these are the people. Decapitate TERFs, kill TERFs. And you want us to shut up about locker rooms and bathrooms and private spaces, women's, prisons?
And we see what happens when women don't speak up about this. The murders, the violence and hate against them just goes up. Like it just increases. It's a very uncomfortable topic to talk about for a lot of people. That's why it's not uncomfortable for me or you, but for other people, it's very uncomfortable. So that's why I think it's imperative that people see, like you said from the beginning of this video, the perspective of other people.
Yep, absolutely. And again, I don't want to disqualify transgenderism. I think I believe wholeheartedly that it is real. I believe gender dysphoria is real. But I do not believe that the majority of truly sincere transgender individuals would act like that.
or feel
No,
like that.
that is psychotic behavior. That is sexual fetish. That is autogynephilia. And that is misogyny wrapped up in this beautiful rainbow cape that they get to jump on this bandwagon of love and tolerance and freedom. And they're ruining it. They're absolutely ruining it. And the autogynephilia, go look up those statistics. You can Google it. You can chat GPT it. You can grok it. You can do any of, you will find the statistics. And I encourage you now to go look at the statistics of the criminal statistics and rates of murder, sexual battery, rape, and domestic violence amongst cross-dressers. That's an important term. You look up cross-dressers. Those are often what people with autogynephilia are generally cross-dressers. And go look at those statistics. Because the statistics of those with autogynephilia who are cross-dressers, who commit crimes, is astronomical. We're not saying like 1 out of 50 cross-dressers, 1 out of 25. Go look it up. Don't take my word for it. I want you to think for yourself and look these things up for yourself. And so these people with sexual fetishes, with autogynephilia, who are cross-dressers, are tagging in on the team of transgender in order to get into women's spaces. And it's hooked up. Look at this. These are transgender influencers. They're highlighted and spotlighted on the cover of magazines. Listen to how this Grace Lavery is a trans-identifying academic and author. This is how she describes transgenderism. There's something about being treated like shit by men that feels like affirmation itself, like a cry of delight from the deepest cavern of my breast. To be the victim of honest, undisguised sexism possesses an exhilarating vitality. How about Andrea Long, a trans-identifying author of the book Females, ironically? Pornography is what it feels like when you think you have an object, but really the object has you. It is therefore quintessential expression of femaleness. Getting fucked makes you female because fucked is what a female is. This is who we're trying to protect through policy. Alec Vaid Menon, trans activist and a writer. These days, the narrative is that transgender people will come into bathrooms and abuse little girls. The supposed purity of the victim has remained stagnant. Can we just stop real quick? This supposed purity of the victim remains stagnant. Mm-hmm. If you have to rewind and listen to that again, do it. There are no princesses. Little girls are also kinky. Little girls are also kinky.
Oh.
Poor kids aren't as straight and narrow as you think.
Wow.
Screenshot this if you want to keep reading these. It's quite a delight. These delightful human beings that are trans activists, writers, academics, professors, authors that are pushing for this ideology to become policy that'll take away women and girls' rights. So again, for those of you who ask me all the time, why do you talk about this so much? Why are you so obsessed with this? Why is this something you are so focused on? I wish I wasn't. I really wish I wasn't. I just wanted to create a course that helped women and practitioners and therapists and providers that work with women. That was my meaning. That was my purpose in life. I put in 15 years of data research and analyzation to put together one of the best courses. And that's all I wanted. That was my legacy until that was taken away from me due to a movement that makes no sense. I don't want this to be my focus. I don't want this to be important to me. It hijacked my legacy and took that away from me. My account started getting shadow banned in early 2020 because they went against community standards of inclusive language and language that was potentially offensive because I used words like cervix instead of front hole. And that's just one example that I was given, I believe, on Instagram early on. I'm like, I'm not going to say front hole. I'm not going to say bodies with vaginas. This is literally, this is a course for women and people who work with women which makes it specifically very exclusionary. The topic, the subject is intentionally exclusionary, but I got shadow banned for that. My sales went down. What am I supposed to do? You threw this at me, world, like you did this, all because of these poor, marginalized peoples. I hope you're proud of yourself.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sarah. I will be the first to say thank you very much for everything that you do and the research you do and the advocacy you do for women. And I know that I have learned what we've been working together for like 5 and a bit years, and I have learned so much. And I was never really able to really speak about it until I, sat down and understood my values and understood that this, if I kept this down inside of me, it was actually just going to create this toxicity. And whenever I wanted to talk about it, it would just it was like this like hate comes out of me because I'm so upset about it. And it gives you, now we have a platform we've been talking about this for a long time, you and I. And I feel actually saddened that it's taken this long for us to come out and talk about it, because we both grew up in competitive sports our whole lives. And it was a very important part of our upbringing to have
Huge.
those sports. And
Yeah.
we know that there are millions of other people, women out there that are exactly in the same position as us, that love sports and want to see women in sports succeed. And it's such an important topic.
Yeah, and then maybe next week we can get into just the psychological implications of this movement if we don't put the skirt on it, if we don't pump the brakes when it comes to policy, what this could look like in terms of, there is no spectrum without polarity. And if we're trying to neuter polarity, then there's nothing. So we have a spiritually neutered society. And just to think about on a spiritual level what that looks like into the future is absolutely terrifying. So I'll leave on this note. This is a compilation also of very popular trans rights activists from TikTok. Again, these are the people who's we're trying to protect with policy.
It's okay to be angry.
If you try to stop me from going into a woman's bathroom,
Excuse me, it's ma'am.
be the last mistake you ever make.
It is ma'am.
Find that anger.
Just because. Hey.
Harness it to do good in the world. This anger
Done, man. We can just make a batch and say that some of us well.
Anger is probably my primary source of motivation
You want to call me sir again?
The thing is, you don't have to leave.
You will move. Lose your bitch.
for everything that I do.
Go out, buy a gun.
Cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
It was a call to action or a call to arms.
Sorry, man.
Don't be afraid to show your anger. It's okay to be.
Again, perception. And that is the worst manipulation by these top social media TikTok influencers that are manipulating young children and vulnerable people. Vulnerable people meaning maybe they've got depression, anxiety, trauma. They're on the autism spectrum. They got any sort of neurodivergence. They know how to get into your perceptive beliefs through their perspective understanding of what makes you vulnerable. And that is what they're generating. Those people that you see like throwing water, cussing, threatening physically, they show up to wolf events, the Women's Liberation Front, when we go to places like DC or our State House representatives and want to talk about these issues being pornography, minors in pornography and access to pornography, abortion rights, women's rights, sports, women in sports, women in prisons. We're talking about all of these things. Those are the people that show up and throw balloons filled with urine and throw them at us. because we want to talk about protecting women's safety and dignity. And that's absolute propaganda and manipulation at in peak form. So I wanted to leave y'all on that so that you understand this is why it's important to me. I have 3 daughters. One of my besties, who is right here, is a female. And we're not going to leave a world behind where that is the marginalized, vulnerable group that we protect. And we want to protect all groups, all women, including transgender women, the real ones, the sincere ones, the ones that actually respect women, not these crazy, psychotic, sexual fetishists that are trying to dismantle and contradict reality. And that's that. Meet us over on Bodybuilding Institute, and we'll have a good old time in office hours on Monday. I hope to see you there.